Welcome back to Startup India. On today's episode, I'm joined by Paroma Chatterjee, CEO of Revolut India. Revolut is a global fintech giant, and in India, they're just getting started. Paroma's leading the charge, and we talk about what Revolut is, why it matters, and how they're truly building something unique for the Indian market. It's a fun and insightful chat. Let's dive in. Paroma, I'll get straight into it. Revolut India is now launching in India. Just for our viewers and anybody who will be watching this show, can you just explain what is Revolut? I know it's a $50 billion company closing in on $50 billion of evaluation. Now, your customers swear by the product. You're now launching in India, relatively a new name. Can you just explain what is Revolut and what should we expect in the next couple of months?
I can keep talking about that, but very briefly, Revolut has really revolutionized the way people do money across UK and Europe primarily. And how we've managed to do it is by being one app that provides all financial solutions. It started out with being a payments first company where we processed both domestic and forex payments in a digital only fashion, giving the most affordable rates. Domestic payments, particularly in India, is already at the most affordable, thanks to the UPI revolution. But the USP that Revolut has created across the 44 countries that it's present in already is giving the most affordable rates around forex as well. Now, affordability is not the only dimension. It's one app that does all kinds of payments in the most affordable manner, as well as instantaneously. So similarly, while we're used to domestic payments happening instantaneously, Revolut does the same even for forex payments. And then from there, Revolut has evolved into a digital bank in 22 out of the 44 countries that we're present in, where we offer all banking solutions and all banking services in a completely digital first manner. So imagine a bank without a bank branch. That's essentially who we are. And that's the journey we're on in India as well. And all of this packaged in a very different tech first consumer app feel, like you would experience in an e-commerce app or a food tech app or a travel tech app, one of the cab apps, the way you would see the flows happen on those apps, you can see the flow of money the same way on the Revolut app, which has truly revolutionized the way people do money.
Right.
And that's
what would you call yourself a banking app? And I want to simplify this a little more for our viewers. And if it is a banking app, what is the difference, let's say, between an SBI bank, which is a traditional bank, versus, let's say, a neobank or an American Express versus what Revolut is? Can you simplify that for our viewers?
Sure. We would love to call ourselves a digital bank. Okay. Now I'll try and explain in a few words the difference between a digital bank and a bank. The neobank term is a much abused term, particularly in India, because what passes for neobank here are essentially apps that create a layer around banking products and offer them to customers. That's not who we are. We're actually producers of our own financial products, licensed by the regulator, licensed by RBI to do it. It's just that we offer it in a digital first fashion. So what that means is if you have a bank account, as you said, with an SBI or an Axis Bank or an HDFC, ICICI, you name it, the amount of money that you hold in your account, you earn interest against that. For us, in a PPI wallet, which is what Revolut is going to be in India, customers can still hold funds. They can still get their payments made into that. They can get their salaries in if they want to into that account. They can get their gig payments for professionals credited into that account. But that will not be an interest-bearing account. So that's the quintessential difference from a customer's point of view. From the back-end point of view, also, the way the regulations are, in case the money is with a scheduled commercial bank, which is what commonly goes as a bank over here, the bank itself keeps the money. And they deploy it in their own treasury, etc., etc. In our case, whatever money the customer puts into the PPI wallet, we still need to hold it at the back end with one of the scheduled commercial banks as an escrow. And that is what is mandated by regulations in India. Those are the two primary differences, if you will. Other than that, there are slightly smaller things like certain limits on transactions, maximum caps on transactions that you can do, maximum amount that you can hold, etc.
So, just of all the products that is essentially core to Revolut, what are some of the, are you bringing all those products into India in one go? Are you phasing them in? What are some of the key products that you're launching very soon now?
Yeah, we are phasing them in to your question number one. Reason being, each of these products requires a different license in it, which is why we first got in the 82 license or the authorized dealer category 2. So banks are 81, and what we got is the 82, which allows us to bring Revolut's best in class forex products into the Indian market, because that's one space we realize is yet to be completely disrupted. There are still pain points. Even now, when you take a forex card and you do a transaction overseas, there are heavy markups and cross currency charges that are levied on the customers. Which are in the order of magnitude of anywhere between 3 to 5%, if not more. If you try to send money abroad as a cross-border remittance, whether it is for students' fees who's going to study overseas, or for medical care if somebody is gone for specialized care, or even for a holiday, a hotel booking, if you want to send money overseas and book it. Today, it not just costs you around 5% overall, it also takes between 3 to 4 days to get credited. So emergency funds, you have to make it in time for the deadline for a school fee or a medical admission, etc. Those are not possible by the traditional banking system. So as an 82, which is digital first, using Revolut's USP, we're able to bring that affordable, same day cross-border money transfers, and in a transparent and paperless manner. So for that, we needed the 82 license, which is the first license that we got and is certainly going to be part of the product suite that we launch with. The second license that we got is the domestic payments. So this only allows you to do cross-border and forex. In order to play in the domestic market, you need a separate license, which is a PPI license, which is the second one we got, which allows us to have UPI, which allows us to have our own @Revolut handle, which allows us to have a stored value wallet in Indian rupee, and which allows us to issue domestic cards that can be used at domestic merchants, and the ability to make QR code payments at domestic merchants. So armed with those two licenses, we'll be first launching with a composite payments product in India, with which you can make seamless payments overseas or in India, send money to anybody within India or overseas. Now, for the other products that bank offers or what Revolut offers globally, you need other licenses. Like to offer credit, you need an NBFC license, So those have all been phased out. As and when we get our licenses, make our own products, we will certainly add those on till we get to the entire suite of products that customers will be able to avail of on the Revolut. Initially, we'll be launching as an end-to-end payments product.
I'm just trying to understand the problem a little deeper here, Paroma. So let's say that I recently traveled somewhere, and I'll give you my experience of how I traveled, right? So I wanted to put some money into my travel currency card. So first I found a travel currency card. Then I went to that branch and I exchanged my INR for US dollars. Then I put that US dollars into that card. With that, I traveled outside. When I did travel outside, I used the ATM machine to take those dollars into the local currency. And for that, a certain amount was charged. Now, what is the big problem that I'm facing? Am I facing higher exchange rate as a problem? And when I'm also debiting my money from the ATM, there's a fee there as well, which is being charged. Are those some of the big challenges that Revolut is disrupting?
Absolutely, spot on. You actually spoke about all three things while you narrated your own experience, and I'm sure lakhs of people who, when they travel overseas, face the same issues. First is the sheer convenience of doing it from your home. In most cases, as you said, you had to go to a physical branch. You would have had to submit documents and copies for those to get verified before giving you the product. We do it completely digitally from the comfort of one's home, and it's the easiest onboarding process that I can go out and say. Okay, to get yourself a card in the first place. So convenience is the first peg, which is to be solved for. which we will. The second peg is what you spoke about, which is all of this. First of all, if you were to use the card at a merchant, you would have had a cross currency markup, which means if you loaded it in USD, and let's say you went to Singapore using USD, so you would have a USD cross currency conversion and a markup. Then when you use it at a merchant in Singapore, you would have a USD to Singapore dollar cross currency markup and a charge, right? Whereas in our case, you can actually load it into multiple multi-currency virtual wallets which are sitting behind. So there is no cross currency conversion. You can load it in the currency of your choice based on the destination where you're traveling direct. And third, even if you had to do that, let's say you were hopping from one destination to another and you loaded in one currency and then went to another, we would transfer it at the back end between the wallets. And you would therefore not be subjected to an additional cross currency mark.
Wow.
And third is what you spoke about, which is where somebody withdraws it as cash. There's a third leg of currency conversion. That also doesn't happen because we transfer it into the wallet at the back end and then you effectively withdraw as currency from the same currency wallet. And the third thing is through the process today, I don't know how long it took you from the time that your Indian account got debited to actually seeing the money in the card that you took. We try to make that in real time.
2 days, if I'm not 2 or 3 days. Yeah, something like that.
Yeah, exactly. You would have taken 2-3 days. They would have said, take the card now. Your account is debited. You would see the balance in your card after 2 or 3 days. In our case, it's same day. So all three, in terms of the convenience of no paperwork, doing it digitally, making it affordable, and near real time or same day, solving for the time aspect as well. All three are things that we are taking care of and we launch the product.
The next question that I want to ask, I don't want to ask you the question as the CEO, India CEO of Revolut India, but more as a thought leader and a finance leader in the fintech world. So it's not from a Revolut India CEO perspective. What led to India's huge success in the fintech industry? You know, we saw a fintech boom in India. What do you make of the fintech story? Is the first question. 2, why was India at the right place at the right time for this to happen? And 3, do you see any other industry in India that can replicate the fintech boom that happened?
Wow, interesting questions. Firstly, I think largely the boom of India fintech has been driven by the tech stack that came in, the India stack as we call it, the STAMP, where we got Indians to open bank accounts. We created something like Aadhaar in the country, which gave a unique biometric identity to all Indians, and the entire mobile number penetration, the network penetration that happened across the length and breadth of India, covering almost the entire population. I think those three were the primary drivers that put the rails in place in India to drive the fintech revenue. So what most fintech companies did, and now I get exposed to the fintech industry across countries, right? And what I see there is most of the companies having to do even the rails themselves and then build a product on top. But in India, given the rails were already built as the India stack, companies needed to come in and just build the platform on top of it, just build the products on top of it, the products and services, and offer them to the customers. I think that has been one main driver of this entire boom that got India to become the third largest fintech hub in the world. Today, we boast of 12,000 odd registered fintechs, right? Because we had the tech stack to build on top of. And second, obviously, nobody can deny the contribution of UPI that led to it. By creating a unified interface, which is equivalent to the entire open banking innovation that is being tried everywhere, if you think about it. You can link any bank account to a UPI handle and be able to transfer money to any other bank. It completely revolutionized the industry. And at that time, by making it free for everybody, got every customer to every merchant to adopt it. Customers were willing to take it and pay using it. Merchants were willing to accept it. And thereby, we got to an 87% fintech adoption in the country. So consumers adopting fintech as well gave rise to more and more companies wanting to do things in this space. Those, I think, have been the two key drivers. The third aspect is in India, with a 1.5 billion population, we still have enough financial problems to solve for. Whether it is things like access to finance or access to financial information or access to credit, which led to a lot of digital lending fintechs, or whether it is the entire market sentiment that drove a lot of customers to want to invest and see their money grow, which led to a lot of investment or wealth oriented fintechs. So I think those three as well, in terms of a lot of need gaps still remaining to be solved for in the industry, and the typical average middle class Indian having the disposable income and the awareness to try different things to grow their money. I think these are the two dimensions from the consumer lens which drove this kind of extraordinary adoption. Today, the 87% adoption of fintech is the highest in the world along with China. So I think those are the three, four things that has driven this innovation.
And is there any other industry that you see that can replicate
For any other industry, this I'm talking purely as a professional outside in perspective that I see. The other industry I see coming close is the health tech industry. Because I think apart from finance, the other industry where there are a lot of need gaps to be solved for, whether it is similarly access to health services, access to high quality health services, affordability for everybody to get high quality health services, transparency in pricing, digitization of health and access to it is, I think, the other big thing that we can solve for. And some of the innovations that are happening on the tech stack. Again, Aadhaar is such a powerful, if you can link medical records to somebody's Aadhaar identity, etc., you already have insurances that are linked to it. I think that is, again, another alternate industry that's at the cusp of a much needed revolution.
Now that fintech is such a boom in the country, now you can put your hat back on as the CEO of Revolut India and answer this question. Is it easier to enter an industry which is booming, or is it more difficult? The reason why I'm asking this is because, is it easier to ride the wave, or is it more difficult because competition could be extremely challenging?
I think from a fintech standpoint, and wearing this particular hat, I think it's easier to enter when it's booming. The reason I'm saying this is it's because it's a highly regulated industry, and that's where I'll draw a distinction between regulated and unregulated industries. In industries that are unregulated, it might be easier to come in when there is nothing and there's pretty much the industry concept. But in a highly regulated industry, what happens is, if it has had a few years of run and growth and scaling, a lot of regulations would already have come in, trying and testing, and sort of the railroad again is laid out, and you don't have to reinvent that and learn that and undo things. So at least that playbook is given. And then what you need to find is within that playbook, what are the white spaces that are, like we spoke about the entire forex, things which are yet to be solved for the consumer, and focus as a company on those specific problem statements and solve for it. When you do that, it's easier to enter.
Lastly, just me trying to understand what Revolut is. How would you differentiate Revolut for two different kinds of clientele? So, for example, I am a working professional in Delhi versus my brother could be a student in Mumbai. How would you communicate Revolut to us differently, meeting our needs?
Okay. First of all, the one thing that's common to whether you're a student in Delhi or a working professional in Mumbai, Revolut will change the way you do money. Okay. Now, what I mean by that is, to a student, what are the top things that you do? Today, let's say you're commuting and everyday expenses could be taken care of by whatever UPI app you may be having. And as a student, you will likely be a digital native who's used to doing it app first, unlike us who moved from other modes to apps later on. So that's still taken care of. But think about other things that you do. You go out with friends. You split bills when you go out. You want to travel along with your friends, but your budget doesn't permit you. And traveling overseas is a big consideration because you don't know how you will pay for things when you go abroad. Now, that's for a student who's, let's say, studying in India. right? Now, with a Revolut app, you have unique features which are tailored to this kind of a segment. We have features where you can actually split bills on the app itself among a set of friends who all have and be able to pay. Right? We anyway spoke about how we make it the most affordable to pay when you go overseas. Other than that, we didn't speak about this, but this is another thing. We have very simplified budgeting and analytics tool, which teaches a young student when they're coming out of their home for the first time, maybe staying in a hostel for the first time, how to budget for different kinds of expenses, their monthly food, monthly entertainment, household expenses, if they're staying in a PG, etc., etc. Offer them all of those budgeting and analytics. And then a lot of students today, they take on side hustles. They could be doing tuitions, they could be, or any other thing. They could actually get that money into that wallet. So it becomes an earning mechanism for them. It helps in their main lifestyle, which is a very sharing oriented lifestyle, helps them get a little more ambitious about their entertainment and travel, etc., and introduce them to the concept of budgeting and analytics as they set foot into a responsible world of managing their own finances. That's how I would explain it to a student why they should take Revolut and start that off as the way they get into the world of money. Now, to you, who could be a more experienced professional, you probably already know your budgeting. You track your money flow. For you, the needs would be more evolved. The needs could be around. You could have children, right? You could be a household expenses. Your ambitions around your travel and leisure may be much more evolved. Now we offer an entire family tool. Like the Revolut comes as a Revolut app along with a junior app. So if you have a kid, you can actually give a version of the Revolut app to the kid on the kid's mobile phone if the kid is a teenager of the age where they have a mobile phone, where you can actually give them some money into their app, into their Revolut app, which you control from your parent app. And you control where they spend, you get visibility to where they're spending that money. Okay. Second, I mean, that's a very family centric, which is actually at the heart of it, that we want to get people into responsible management of payments. And the second aspect is what I spoke about, more ambitious needs. Let's say you have an older kid who you want to send overseas to study. Right there today, the things that we spoke about sending money overseas as fees or their living expenses overseas. These are made absolutely seamless if you have the Revolut app. Third, even just for holidays, more ambitious holidays where you want to spend more, we actually make it affordable for you to target this kind of ambitious lifestyle choices. And last but not the least, it's a credit card-like benefits on an app. But we also have the kind of rewards on spends that otherwise that top portion of India, the top 25 million Indians who account for the 50 million credit cards that are in circulation in India, we make that available to the next 150 to 100 million Indians, those kind of benefits and rewards on an app. So you get that composite feel of a responsible app for your entire family who makes money management affordable for you. And we help you track like never before. You can actually see the money movement like the flow of e-commerce delivery or a food delivery or a ride that is coming to pick you up. So we completely redefine the way you track and control your money and also give you the rewards. And then other things, I don't want to reveal too much before our launch, but first app which comes as a subscription pack. You may be used to your online channels, subscribing for packs over there based on what kind of content you want to consume on different channels. You wouldn't have thought of a payment app which could have subscription link benefits. So we'll offer that as well. So you'll see us completely reinventing the way you manage money in a much more evolved fashion for the professional.
Right, that's amazing. Now, I think we have a fair understanding of what Revolut the app is. I do want to shift focus a little bit on leaders. And actually, one of the goals that we have on Startup India is how do you, as a founder, how do you build a product from 0 to 1? So what I'm going to try and do, and I'm going to try and ask you a couple of questions in that direction of how do you build a 0 to 1 product, and what are the key attributes of a leader? so that anybody who's on the fence and wants to start something of their own, they actually get to learn from this conversation. So if that's okay, that's where I move my next set of questions towards.
I'll try my best to answer your questions from my experience.
Thank you so much. Thank you. So, Paroma, one of the questions the first question that I actually have in mind is, from starting as a management trainee in Procter and Gamble to becoming the India CEO of one of the largest fintech companies in the world, disruptive fintech companies in the world, if somebody else has a dream like yours, what would you suggest to them? What are the key learnings that they can take from your journey?
The number one thing that I would suggest to anybody, which I do, is build, build, build. Take on whatever opportunities come your way to build something that has not been built yet or built before. Don't be afraid. Don't be afraid to try new things, and choose the path less traveled. What I mean by these three, and I'll try and illustrate that through a few examples in my life. Like, after my management training stint, I actually started working post MBA with ICICI Bank. And in ICICI Bank, I was in cards. I could have taken a regular role to just grow the number of cards in circulation by an X percentage, which is what's the most common. Then there came this small window of opportunity for launching a co-brand. Co-brands didn't exist in the Indian market. Now, you could think, as I was, a 23-year-old at that point of time. I could think as a 23-year-old, let me stick with the more important assignments, which are already established, and grow my career from there on. It's more predictable. Or I could go and say, okay, here's a chink. Let me try and pick it up and let's see what we do with it. I have always picked up those opportunities. So this particular example, what led to that was the launch of the Big Bazaar and HPCL co-branded cards, which today are household names, which have 1 million cards each already. That's because as a 23-year-old, I did pick up that opportunity to launch something which didn't exist over there, and that had its payoffs for me. I just narrated one example from the outset of my career, but that has been the one common thread throughout. Like 4 or 5 years on, I was already identified as part of the leadership talent pool in ICICI Bank. I could have just gone on, and a lot of people go on in the companies where they found it. And then there came an opportunity for a bank at that time, which was less heard of in the retail domain, called Kotak Mahindra Bank, who didn't even have a cards business or a cards product. But there came up an opportunity to launch cards for them. I took that up. Again, the easier alternative would have been to continue, and ICICI Bank was big, successful already. You have a career that's set, people know you, culturally you're set. It would have been very easy to continue there. But to decide to trade that off to be able to build something, again, launch something which didn't exist, not knowing whether it'll fire or not, but just do it. And if it happens, we launch Kotak cards. When we launch Kotak cards, again, similar benefits. Can cut to 4 or 5 years later, I'd already spent a decade in banking, doing well in retail banking, in the cards domain, etc., etc. Could have continued in banking. But then this is the year 2010 that I'm talking about. There came the opportunity to join the leading telecom company, Airtel, to even invent how mobile money would be done. Today, mobile money is taken for granted. At that time, it didn't even exist. This was the era of the Nokia 3310 handsets on which you played Snake. And you got SMS alerts giving you the cricket scores when you pulled a USSD string, *123#. To even think of inventing how that instrument and that connection could be used to make payments. Went for it. Because that was, again, something that didn't exist. Got the opportunity to build. Did that for 5 years, built and scaled that to, at that time, that itself having 20 million customers of Airtel Money in 5 years' time. So, again, I just gave a few examples, but to your core question that you'd asked, I think if you always make the choice of choosing to build, then you really create something of value, and life has a way of rewarding builders. Whether you're a builder
That's
within an
amazing.
organization or whether you're a builder of your own company as a founder, take up the opportunity to build, do something that doesn't exist, then you will leave the world with a mark, with something that didn't exist before you. And don't be afraid to go off the beaten path and try these things. I think those would be the three things that I would say from my life are have what has driven those inflection points which has got me there. And it'll continue to remain even in the next decade, if not more.
So, Parama, my sense, and while I was doing my research on you, my sense, and correct me if I'm wrong, but my sense is that you're also somebody who's driven by care. And by care, I mean caring for somebody else's problem. And you give an example in one of your interviews where you talk about how migrant workers, you had seen that migrant workers who would move to Delhi or Mumbai, they would have a hard time sending money back to their villages. And it was a problem both for the sender and the receiver. And a lot of time, the people in villages, they would have to travel to the district headquarters of a bank just to collect money, and they didn't have any money to even travel. And that pained a lot to you. And I think, and that gave me a sense that you deeply care for solving a problem. Do you think that caring for solving somebody else's problem is a key attribute of leadership? And that just truly makes good leaders.
You are so spot on, but you're the first person in all the hundreds of interviews that I've done who's actually used the word care. And you are so
Thank you.
spot on. I think I can't even underscore the importance of how important it is to genuinely deeply care. Deeply care about a consumer, deeply care about an employee, deeply care about an issue. And that's actually at the heart of problem solving. Because if you just care about yourself, you will end up building products for products' sake, business for business's sake, which can get short term gains. But if you want to create something that's lasting, you need to be able to just live life, see people around, observe. One of the other things that comes before caring is actually observing. A lot of people tend to be so absorbed in their own lives that they don't always imbibe what's going on around them with others. I think it's really important to observe how other people's lives are, really people who are not like you. Because the people who are like you already know what they're like and what their lives are. But to make an effort to observe what the lives of people who are not like you are like. Where are they spending their time? And how can you help them save it? Where are they spending their money? How can you help them save it? What are their biggest pain points that are bothering them today? And can you help solve for it? If you apply this lens to consumers, similarly, if you apply it to your employees, right? What is it
Right.
that your employee is spending the maximum time on? How can you help your employees save time and get some time out for themselves, right? Where are your employees getting stuck, or what are their biggest pain points? Why are your employees leaving? If you're actually able to solve for those by deeply caring, you also build an institution that attracts a lot of people. Even in Revolut India, we have grown to more than 4,000 people in just 3 years' time. We have a grueling 7 round process for we've had more than 1 million applications, across all the job profiles that we've listed in India in the last 3 years.
Wow. One
For
million.
each, yes, we've crossed the 1 million resume mark. So it is difficult
That's amazing.
to choose people. So we do have a grueling process, and we unfortunately do disappoint a lot of people. But I think because of that, we get to attract the best. But that's also done because by caring about what employees want, and thereby the entire continuation of the remote hybrid working emanated from there. Because it wasn't a temporary solution given to employees just waiting to call employees back to the office as soon as things normalize. It was very much that it has actually changed things for people. How do we make them more efficient? How do we optimize their work? How do we make their work visible to people? How do we keep people connected? If you solve for these four, you can allow people to work remotely and give a cool office space for them to come in whenever they want to, which we've done.
Right.
Our benefits are tiered the same way. Again, a lot of companies have benefits which are linked to hierarchy. For us, it's nothing. The junior most employee, to me, the benefits are identical. Because, I mean, if my mother has to get hospitalized versus my junior most employee's mother has to get hospitalized, the treatment will cost the same. Why should the insurance cover be different? So, just caring for small things like that, whether it comes to your consumer or whether it comes to your employee. Again, when we spoke about forex, I see so many people who are struggling. On the one hand, we spoke about the more privileged Indian who could be sending their kid overseas and has a fee requirement. To the other side, you have the blue collar worker who has their family back in a village in a small town, let's say in Kerala, and working in a Dubai and has to send money back. Why should they lose so much of their hard earned salary in just cross currency charges? And God forbid there's a medical emergency at home. Why should they not be able to immediately get money sent to their family? So, caring about issues that are there out there in the world, if you have that lens and you work to solve for it, then a couple of things happen. One is you are energized every single day because you're not going into work just to do some work or to please some boss. You're going into work to solve a real problem, and that's probably the biggest energizer that keeps me passionate about my work more than 22 years on now.
Parma, the other question that I had is actually for people who are on the fence. They want to start something of their own, but are scared to take that final leap. And in one of your earlier conversations, you mentioned that there are three ways of launching a startup. One is you take the dual role of a founder and a CEO. And in the other case, you realize that, hey, you know what, I just love building a product. And maybe I don't understand compliances, maybe I don't understand finances or balance sheet or legal. And in that case, it's a great way would be to get a professional CEO to run the company. Now, you also point out that in a case like that, two things can happen. One is that if the values align, the product really, really takes off. And in the other case, if the values do not align, maybe things go south for a while. As a founder who may be interested in taking this route of getting a professional CEO to just run their company, what qualities should I be looking for to making sure that my values align well with the CEO, and just to mitigate my risks of something that may have happened earlier with some other companies? What values or qualities should I be looking for when I'm taking this route?
Okay, that's again a very interesting question, and it is a very advisable path, which unfortunately not everybody does. So I think the first thing is to know yourself as a founder, right? What are the skills you bring to the table, and what are your own personal interest areas, and be honest about it. It's not about ego, it's not about power, it's genuine honesty with yourself about what your skills and strengths are, and is number one. Then number two, listing down the complementary skill sets that you're looking for. As you gave some examples about, let's say, product is the founder's skill, regulatory is not. But actually listing those down so you have a set of hard skills that you look for as complementary to yourself. So if it becomes contradictory, if it's similar skill sets, there is a chance of friction. One person, if it is complementary skill sets, I think that match works. So that's first on the hard skills
Right.
part of it. Second and most important is actually alignment of values. Now, alignment of values, there's unfortunately no magic pill to swallow to predict whether there's going to be a value alignment or not. But 4 or 5 key pointers that I can share again from my experience is one of the things to look for in a professional CEO is an actually roll up your sleeves and get it done orientation. Because what unfortunately happens a lot of times in a typical corporate structure as somebody works their way up after 15, 20, 25 years, they tend to get to a point where processes are defined, where there are people working on those processes. And the orientation and the habit to get your own hands dirty and start from scratch and get into a process, solve it, and get things done, that could get depleted or eroded over time for certain people. So for a founder who's bringing in a CEO, I think they need to be conscious of whether somebody has that strong get it done orientation or not. And somebody who aspires to be a CEO as a partner with a founder, they need to remember too to keep that orientation alive. Like again, when I joined the stint at Revolut in April 2021, I had already worked for 17, 18 years. I had led teams that were 2,000 employee plus. In my first month, I had all of 7 employees. Did pretty much everything myself. So you need to have the orientation to do what is required to be done and not shirk from getting your hands dirty. That's one. The second thing, which is I think important match for both founder and founder CEO, is a never settle orientation, which is basically the level of ambition needs to be similar. Because a lot of friction happens around the ambition itself. Right? Typically, a founder is hugely ambitious for a number of things they want done, and the CEO is seen as a dampener to that ambition because they want to keep things within a certain remit to ensure that it's functioning smoothly. But I think a match of being able to think audaciously and ambitiously is important. That's the second thing to look out for as to how ambitious is the person who's coming in and whether they'd be able to fly with you in your dreams, both ways.
Right.
Is in terms of complementary skill sets is the ability to really think deep and go 360-degree horizontal, because wherever I've seen it work, I think that is one of the biggest values that the CEO brings in, because the founder typically is so obsessed and deep into their core business idea or product idea that oftentimes a lot of other ancillary things become blind spots, whether it is stakeholder management, partnerships, regulations, trends, competition, culture, a lot of those things. So bring in somebody who has the ability to think 360 degree and be able to look at the rest of the organization when you're not as a founder. I think those would be some of the three qualities to look for to ensure that there's a good match, apart from the core complementary skill sets
Right.
from both ways.
Right. So, Paroma, if I understand correctly, Revolut thought of launching in India in 2020. You're finally launching in 2025. How have those 4-5 years been, and has it taken from intent to an outcome? Has it taken 4 years or 5 years? Is it because banking regulations in India are very, very strict, or is just getting the right team ready before the launch? Is it multiple factors? If you can just shed some light on that, that would be fantastic.
Sure. When you say 2021, Revolut's intent was eventually to launch in India, but to enter India. And what we had in April 2021 when I joined was just a laptop and a dream. Literally, there was nothing whatsoever in place. Even Revolut India wasn't even an entity in India. I came on the roles of the global entity.
Yeah. Sorry
So
to
it
cut you
had
off there. Just, my next question is actually a follow-up to what exactly you're saying right now. Is that, do you remember your day one? What was it like, and what was in place, what was not in place? That's exactly the question that I'm trying to get at. Sorry. Yeah, continue.
Yeah, as I said, on my day one, there was one other employee in the company who was the HR employee who had been onboarded just before me to onboard me. There was nobody else, not a single human being. Okay. There was somebody who was appointed from the international team to look at scoping out India as a market, who was there, who was reporting into the global team. Okay. Those were the only two people I had to reach out to and start. There was no company, right, on which I had a payroll. Even payroll wasn't there, right? There was no provident fund registration. There was no insurance. I mean, things you take for granted when you join a company, like a salary account, a PF, a lot. None of that was in place. That's what I meant. I was just handed a laptop, one person to onboard me to the global entity, and a dream that figured out how we can enter India. That was literally a one-liner statement. That's where we started from. So it's not like 2021 Revolut was ready to launch. It kind of started from there. So the first order of business was to even incorporate Revolut as a company in India. And you know what a company incorporation takes? It started, from the Ministry of Corporate Affairs. And because we were a global company, it required the Ministry of External Affairs and everybody to agree to even give us the license to incorporate a company in India. And then all the incorporation formalities. And incorporation formalities in India are fairly complex. including things like GST registrations, PF, professional tax. These are statewide, all of those, So first order of business was just to get that done. And pretty much the most of 2021 was spent in doing that. So by the end of 2021, what we had was a company in India that could do something that Revolut wanted. Let's be clear. Okay. Then the next order of business was to figure out which is the first license that we want. Now, here's the other thing. There are two ways to enter a market, particularly as a fintech. One is to actually get the licenses that you need for the financial products, have the patience to wait for those licenses and build for it and launch, or enter as an aggregator or a tech service provider where you just partner with a bank to distribute a bank's products to an app. Now, most of the 12,000 fintechs that we speak about have actually done the latter, if you think about it. It's mostly in partnership with a bank where the products are a bank's. The cards that you speak about are pretty much all co-branded cards where the issuer is actually a bank. And that's very, very easy because you don't need any licenses. You're not subject directly to the regulations. You just partner with somebody, a bank which is already in existence, has all the products, and then you just create it on your app and launch it. But Revolut's thought process, as we spoke about earlier, is a little different, is actually vastly different. We are a digital bank in multiple countries. We intend to be a full-fledged bank. And where we're not, we want to have the licenses to build our own products and offer them to the customers with control over the entire customer experience and control over the business model. So the second order of business was to apply for licenses. Then you choose which license you want to first apply for. And going back, I think we decided to take on the forex license first because that's the space we identified where there were maximum problems yet remaining to be solved for. In the domestic payments space, as spoken, there were already many players which were already operating at scale and a lot of innovation had happened. Likewise, quite a bit in lending, quite a bit in wealth tech, insurtech, etc. But in the forex space, there is still a lot of problems to be solved for. So we said, okay, let's start with where max problems still remain, and which is the USP of Revolut. So we spent time. Now, when you enter the forex space, also the 82 is actually a via media route. You first have to take an FFMC license, which is a field physical money changing license, operate that for a couple of years as a physical money changer, assure the regulator that you're doing a good job, and then upgrade to an 82, which is the digital version of giving your own forex trades. Now, we wanted directly the 82. So therefore, we decided to go for an inorganic route and acquired an 82. So the next half a year was much spent in scoping out the market, negotiating, and taking over an 82 which was existing in the market, and then driving the due diligence and the acquisition. So we acquired. It took us 6 months to do that, which is when we acquired a company with 82 licenses, and therefore Revolut had its first license in India by acquiring a company. Then comes Indian procedures. Even when you acquire a company, it took us between 5 to 6 months to do the entire change of control, change management, and then get the name changed and everything to becoming fully Revolut Forex India Private Limited. So to completely transform the company and make it Revolut is what took us another 5-6 years. That got us till end of 2022. So by 2022, we had a Forex license, which was fully made like Revolut, and we were Revolut in that sense. Now we had to launch the product on top. Now there, again, there's a difference between Indian companies building and foreign companies coming in. RBI has strict data localization norms. So we pretty much had to localize Revolut's entire global tech stack for India. Now, most of the global foreign banks have spent years doing that. We took a year, pretty much 2023, in localizing Revolut's tech stack for India. The platform, the issuing engine, processing engine, all the data pipes, including backup servers, everything has been localized for doing business in India. Which also goes to show the intent of the company to get the regulation localized, do it right. And spend a year in acquiring the license, spend a year in localizing the product. Now, while we were doing the localization and building of the product, at that time, we decided to apply for the domestic payment license. The thought process there was that while the Forex is the differentiator, if somebody takes the Revolut app for Forex, Why should they need to go to a different domestic payment app to take care of their domestic needs? Payments is our bread and butter and our USP. So we applied for the domestic payment license in the meantime. Now, cut to 2024 April, our forex product was built. We actually had and it went live with our employees. We actually had the choice to launch that in the market or not. But at that time, we also got our PPI in principle authorization. And that also speaks about the patience and strategic orientation of the company. It actually said, let's not launch with just the Forex product. Let it be live with the employees as they're using it. But let's focus on building out the domestic payment product in parallel, which is what we spent 2024 doing, building out the PPI product, getting it audited, submitting the system audit report back to RBI, and getting that converted to a full authorization. So now, cut to May 25, we have both the Forex product ready, we have the full authorization on domestic payments, and we are gearing up, therefore, to enter the market by launching a full-fledged payments product across domestic and Forex, which we think will be a key differentiator that the market has not witnessed so far. That's been the Revolut story internally for the last 4 years. And now that you hear it, for me, it has been not one dull moment. It has been like literally building from one step to another. Internally, for the employees, it has been frenetic pace through all of these 4 years to get it to this point.
Right. When should we expect the launch now in India? Do we have a date
So
in mind?
RBI
Or like a
gives us a
month?
deadline. No, RBI gives us a deadline of 6 months post full authorization. So we have a deadline
Okay.
to launch by October. So we will ensure we launch before the deadline for sure.
Lovely. Awesome. Just to build up on this question, when you enter a crowded space like fintech is in India, in such a highly competitive space, my sense is that culture of an organization will play a key role. And that's where my last couple of questions really lie, Paroma, is that how important do you think culture plays in building an organization? And if you can shed some light on Revolut as a culture.
Incredibly important, because at the end of the day, it's the people who are making whatever you're launching. And culture is not the words that we put up on posters. Culture is what people live and breathe the entire day. And one of the tricky things, honestly, has been to set up a global versus local culture, where for a global company, every country has its own cultural nuances in employee expectations, how they operate, consumer expectations, even regulatory engagement, etc. Okay, and the global company headquarters has a certain way of working. Now, to take the best of the global culture and bring it into India, as well as customize and localize for the cultural nuances of the country that you're in, has been one of the trickiest things that I've had to do, honestly, and one of the things that I'm proudest of having built over here. But the two, three things that I touched upon earlier, which are the qualities of, getting things done. I think that's very common, and therefore we looked for that in every single hire anywhere in the world, and that's one of the things that Revolut stands for. So when you have an organization full of really bright people who just want to get things done, that becomes a unifying element of the culture. Where the next person sitting next to you or the next person you're getting on a call with also wants to get something done as badly as you want. That's one of the key elements that binds us together across. Again, this entire thing of being very ambitious and having the patience for the sake of ambition. Not cutting corners and shortchanging and launching really quickly, getting in a few numbers. That's not the game we're in. We're in the game to launch big, launch differentiated products and really make a difference in the market. And that ambition is a shared ambition with so the company has about 10,000 employees globally, of which today close to 40% are sitting in India. So we're 40% of Revolut, if you think. Yeah. But every one of those 10,000 employees is bright and ambitious and really want to set audacious goals, keep upping their goals. So that's another shared culture. It's not about somebody who goes and, pulls it back. It's about everybody who wants to run for is another shared culture. And I think our hiring process, which I spoke about, those 7 layers, which literally sifts out the best people. And I think remote working has also enabled us to hire the best person because we are not constrained by the location of the person. If the brightest person is in Arunachal, they get hired from there. If the brightest person is in Trivandrum, they get hired from there. So, literally being able to build a team with the best person for the job, I think, is the other culture that goes all across Revolut. Everyone who comes in is an extraordinary achiever, is very bright, and if they apply themselves to getting things done and to a high ambition, that's how we make magic happen. I think those are
That's
some
amazing.
core key elements of our cultural secret sauce, if you will, and yeah, the ability to work together. So we have multiple nationalities. Each sub team can have between 4 to 5 nationalities working together cross functionally. But because everybody is laser focused on the outcome, it brings so many nationalities together. And the other thing that I've been observing over the last 4 years is I think people are picking up the good bits about each other's cultures. And that makes it a real pot boiler of multiple cultures and a true multinational company in every sense of the word. And that is showing up in how we're there in 45. I mean, if you count India, 45 countries now, and we're getting
Right.
close to a $50 valuation.
Oh, that's amazing. As we end this episode, my last question is just adding on to again cultural aspect of it. Just how do you, as Paroma Chatterjee, motivate your team, to follow the road not taken, considering you're deeply inspired by the poem, and it has yielded a lot of good results in your life.
Just two simple things on that. I think inspiration. The word inspiration is overrated. I think you
Yeah,
just got to be who you are. And I am who I am. I haven't closeted myself in a black box. I am approachable to everybody. I am who I am in every conversation. I make the time to talk to people, guide, and mentor them as well. So, just by being you and demonstrating those qualities that you stand for in every single interaction, every single meeting, every single decision that you make, I think it's more an example, I would say, rather than an inspiration. And I think that's one of the things that leaders can do by just being the best version of themselves and being honest about it. Second is, I mean, like we said, we believe in a culture of bringing in a type of people who resonate with the basic things that you believe in, and I think that is equally important to be able to inspire people, a high number of people behind a similar cause. Is if you bring in people with shared orientation, it just makes the task so much easier. If you bring in people who are equally ambitious, who are equally oriented towards getting things done, who are equally agile, who are equally adaptive, it just makes it so much easier because they get what you're saying, they get what you want to do, and they want to do the same thing. So you're in it where everybody wants the same outcome. And then when you have these two, then you just let things be. Then I don't need to micromanage. Then I can empower. Because every person wants to do their bit and they're a leader in their own right. And if they're given the right resources, I look at myself as being there to just make the right resources available for the people, everybody, whatever piece of work they're doing, unblock whatever they're blocked for and give them guidance wherever they're looking for it. So if we just calibrate our role as that, you don't need to micromanage. That's not my style. Every single thing that every single person is doing, that count on them to surprise you and create their own magic. That's what we do.
thank you so much, Parama. I think that's a wrap. I think we learned a lot in today's episode, and I think I just hope that this episode reaches to a lot many more people who want to start something of their own, because some of the things that you mentioned, I think any leader can learn a lot out of that. So thank you so much for being on Startup India, and we really really appreciate you being here.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate you having me here and I enjoyed our conversation. Thanks.
That's a wrap on this episode of Startup India. I really enjoyed chatting with Paroma about Revolut's big plans for India and how they're approaching fintech with a fresh perspective. If you found this conversation interesting, don't forget to like, share, and hit subscribe. We've got many more founder journeys and big ideas coming your way. Thanks for tuning in. See you in the next one.